It's the idea of the 99% versus the 1% who are like benefiting off of like, you know, like profiting off the system and living highly and denying services and basic rights and things to, you know, to the large mass of the individuals in society. We, the students, are part of that 99%, and you see, like, you know, these cuts to education happening and this tuition rising, and it's barring a lot of people from even being able to attend school.
What we're dealing with right now is a direct product of an almost full-on free market. The Great Depression is another example of a full-on free market gone awry. And we learned from that, and then we forgot. We forgot because we don't care about our history.
Though FDR was not like a full-on socialist, because I was actually being critical of like past progressives, saying that like, you know, just as we were criticizing Obama, we're saying like no progressive president has like really been fully on the side of the people. All of them are somewhat close to large corporations and to elites and such, including FDR. And I was using FDR as an example of how he had to sort of give his like elite buddies a sort of assurance that it wasn't going to be full-on socialism. But Jason was highlighting though that like because we had gone so far awry like with you know, and gone into the Great Depression, essentially FDR, in Jason's words, saved capitalism with socialism. You know, he had these large, very socialistic type policies, you know, where everyone pays into something and then the benefits are sort of given out according to who needs them, or, you know, given out, dispersed equally.
You're speaking of Social Security or unemployment insurance.
Exactly.
And, you know,
and redistributing wealth and resources.
And, you know, all these mass infrastructure projects and Glass-Steagall, which needs to be restored ASAP.
And what is Glass-Steagall in a nutshell?
Okay, Glass-Steagall was a barrier between the investment banks and the depository banks. So it's what kept things like having, I mean, you can have your JP Morgans and you can have your Chases, but you couldn't have a JP Morgan Chase.
When you combine investment banks with
depository banks?
With like depository banks, basically they start taking like all the money that they get from just like the average person who's just doing these deposits forever, and then putting them, like making them part of their big game, like, you know, gambling and doing like these crazy financial policies to make as much money as possible, like in those, you know, like financial market stuff.
So they're not just gambling with an investor's money.
Yeah, they're
speculating with someone who understands what he's getting into. They're speculating with Grandma Millie's money.
Right.
And they're speculating with Grandma Millie's house. When you have banks that are too big to fail, because, you know, they've hoarded all this wealth in one spot and their investment and deposits at one time, then you've got problems. And I find this kind of ridiculous that, like, you know, the banks were too big to fail to begin with, and now we've let them consolidate on each other.
So they've gotten even bigger.
So they've gotten even bigger, and we're straight up like Frankenbanking. You know, we've got like parts from this failed bank and this failed bank, and, you know, we stitched it all together, and like, well, you know, these are bankers. They know how to work, you know, finance and make this shit work. Well, if they knew how to make this shit work, we wouldn't be here. With socialism, to varying degrees, government has the ability to compete with businesses or to subsidize businesses. And because in a democracy, the government is beholden to the voters, ultimately the voters have control to some degree over industry. As opposed to what we have right now, where industry has complete and total control over the government. So socialism actually is a little more compatible with democracy than capitalism is, even though we like our Wild West kind of mentality. I mean, the thing about the Wild West is someone's getting shot, you know?
I'll go a little bit further to say that it seems very obvious to me, but capitalism to me is very naturally incompatible with democracy. It just is. And to me, it's like, you know, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing as a value judgment, that's for anyone to determine. But as far as just looking at it structurally, capitalism is structured on the whole idea of inequality. It's fundamental to the whole concept of how capitalism works.
Yeah.
So, and inequality undermines the very notion of democracy. I mean, you know, not everyone has the same and equal voice. As far as socialism having solutions, the idea, like, even if you have like sort of partial socialism with like FDR's New Deal, like in that case at least you can have something that sort of reins in some of the worst excesses and the worst oppressions and worst sort of violence that capitalism does on its populace. Because, like, for instance, if we had like a nationalized a national bank, almost like a public option for banking, then it's something that could sort of hold banks, like the large banks, accountable, the big business banks accountable, because the policies that the government would have wouldn't be like, you know, an institution that's incentivized by profit, and, you know, it's a service for the people, you know, sort of supported by taxes or something like that. And its policies wouldn't have that sort of, you know, let's get as much out of the people bent to it, and because of that, no one would go to those businesses if they're getting charged like all these ridiculous fees. The United States has never been like, you know, a highly like, you know, democratic egalitarian society. Never.
No.
It was built with you know, equality explicit, like even in the Constitution. It was only for, you know, white property only owning males were the only people who were really you know, considered as part of that citizenry anyway. Yeah. So it's really trying to have democracy for the very first time is what we're what we're aiming for here, and to not make the same mistakes as the past. And some of those mistakes have been falling to that idea of just reform or going to like one particular sector, like just, you know, just the banks. Like it's the underlying conditions, and it really ties back to like that idea of like we are the 99%. Well, that's a very conceptual thing. Like just having it introduces that whole notion that there's something inherently wrong with a 1% hoarding like most of the wealth, while the 99% like work
to fight for the scraps.
Yeah, fight for the scraps and work to produce that wealth for that 1%, and yet are not the beneficiaries of it. That's a very large structural thing. Reform doesn't get at that. It's more than that. It's like what he was saying, like a whole remodeling.
Above all else, we need clean money, because that's how you get the corporations out of the electoral process. Is you have elections run on public funds, because that's the only real way to protect the people.